Kira sat in the small conference room, facing Marjorie Thompson and Denise from HR across the polished table. After 15 years with TechVantage, she had anticipated this moment, though the reality still carried its own weight. Marjorie's voice held a barely concealed note of satisfaction as she announced the restructuring, her carefully crafted expression of corporate regret not quite reaching her eyes. The company was moving in a new direction, Denise explained, sliding a manila folder across the table. The research division would be consolidated under the product development team. Kara's contributions had been valuable, they assured her, but changes were necessary. Inside the folder would be the standard package: 2 weeks severance for every year of service, 3 months of continued health coverage, and a list of career counseling resources she would never use. Kira nodded thoughtfully, accepting the folder without opening it. Her voice remained steady as she replied that she completely understood that these decisions were never easy. Relief washed across their faces immediately. They had clearly braced themselves for tears, protests, or anger. After all, they were pushing out a 55-year-old woman from an industry that prized youth above experience. What they couldn't know was that Kira had been preparing for this exact moment for weeks, ever since a misdirected email thread had appeared in her inbox last month, revealing the company's plans. Marjorie gained confidence from Kira's apparent acceptance, requesting that she clean out her desk by Friday. They would need her keycard, company laptop, and phone before she left. Her team would be notified that afternoon. Kira thought of those 6 brilliant engineers she had personally recruited and mentored over the years, the same team that had helped her develop the distributed processing algorithm now powering TechVantage's flagship product, AccountSphere, which was used by over 40% of Fortune 500 companies. As Kira rose from her chair and confirmed there was nothing else she needed to discuss, Marjorie and Denise exchanged glances, clearly thrown by her composure. Walking back to her office, Kira passed the glass-walled conference room where the executive team was meeting. Through the transparent barrier, she could see CEO Victor Lawson gesturing animatedly at a PowerPoint presentation titled Q3 Revenue Projections. This was the same Victor Lawson who had taken credit for her algorithm at last year's industry conference, referring to her only as one of their research team members. Closing her office door, Kira pulled out her personal phone and sent a single text message stating that it was happening and Friday would be her last day. The response came immediately, confirming that contracts were ready and suggesting dinner that evening to finalize details. Kira smiled as she looked at the calendar on her desk. Today was Wednesday, Friday she would leave TechVantage for the last time, and Monday would be fascinating. That evening, Kira met Gregory Sullivan at Meridian, an upscale restaurant far from TechVantage's headquarters. As CEO of Precision Systems, TechVantage's largest competitor, Greg understood the value of discretion. He had reserved a private dining alcove in the back, shielded from curious eyes by elegant Japanese screens. After they ordered, Greg shook his head in disbelief that they had actually done it. He had suspected they might, but to cut the very person who developed their core technology seemed unconscionable. Kira sipped her water and explained that Victor had never understood what she actually created. He saw the implementation, the user interface, the marketing potential, but the underlying architecture was just tech stuff to him. The irony was almost too perfect. 3 months ago, Kira had discovered that the patent application for her distributed processing algorithm had never been filed by TechVantage's legal team. When she inquired, they claimed it was an oversight and assured her they would handle it immediately. Something about their response seemed off, prompting her to check the company's internal documentation. That's when she found the strategy memo outlining plans to claim the algorithm as company-developed technology without specific inventor attribution. They had planned to push her out before securing the patent, knowing that intellectual property developed by employees typically belonged to the company. What TechVantage didn't know was that Kira had already been working on refinements to the algorithm on her own time using her personal equipment. Those improvements, which dramatically increased processing efficiency by 43%, weren't covered by her employment agreement. She had quietly filed for a patent under her own name last month, fully documented with timestamps and development logs that clearly showed the work was completed outside of company time. The patent had been granted with remarkable speed, thanks to Greg's introduction to a top-tier IP attorney. Greg slid a folder across the table, confirming that all the paperwork was finalized. As soon as Kira signed, Precision Systems would officially acquire exclusive licensing rights to her patent. The press release would go out Monday morning, announcing her as their new Chief Innovation Officer. Kira reviewed the documents carefully, though she had already memorized the key terms: a seven-figure signing bonus, substantial equity in precision systems, and ongoing royalties from all products using her algorithm. Greg asked what she thought Victor's face would look like when he realized what had happened, unable to hide his satisfaction at the prospect. Kira admitted she was more concerned about her team, who didn't deserve to be caught in the fallout. Greg nodded, explaining that this was already addressed. They had positions for all 6 of them if they were interested, senior roles with significant raises. Kira signed the final page and closed the folder. In one elegant move, she had secured her future, protected her team, and positioned her work for proper recognition. They raised their glasses to new beginnings and to owning your own value. Thursday and Friday passed in a blur of exit interviews, knowledge transfer meetings, and goodbyes to colleagues. Kira maintained her professional composure throughout, even as rumors spread across the company. Administrative assistants gave her sympathetic glances in the hallways. Junior developers approached awkwardly, asking if she would provide LinkedIn recommendations before she left. She documented everything meticulously, every project, every password, every process, knowing full well that TechVantage would soon discover just how much they needed her expertise. Her decision to leave comprehensive transition notes wasn't kindness. It was evidence that she had acted in good faith while the company had not. During her final exit interview on Friday afternoon, Denise from HR went through the standard checklist with mechanical efficiency. She stated that any intellectual property developed during Kira's employment remained the property of TechVantage, pushing a non-disclosure agreement across the table. Kira replied pleasantly that of course anything developed within the scope of her employment, using company resources during company time, belonged to them. She emphasized those qualifiers slightly, but Denise was too busy checking boxes to notice. When asked if she had any copies of proprietary company information, Kira confirmed truthfully that she had taken nothing that belonged to TechVantage. The patent was hers after all. As Kira packed her personal items, Marjorie stopped by, leaning against her door frame with artificial casualness. She wanted to check that everything was clear for the departure, watching as Kira placed family photos, conference badges marking 15 years of industry events, and the coffee mug her team had given her last Christmas into a cardboard box. Kira wrapped a small award she had received for the very algorithm now at the center of her plans, the irony not lost on her as she carefully placed it between layers of tissue paper. Marjorie continued that these restructuring decisions were never personal. Victor felt the company needed to move in a more youthful direction. Kira looked up, meeting her gaze directly, replying that she understood completely. Business was business. Something in her tone made Marjorie pause, uncertainty flickering across her face for a brief moment before she quickly dismissed it. What could a soon-to-be unemployed 55-year-old woman possibly do? When Marjorie asked if Kira would be taking some time off, adding an artificial note of concern to her voice, Kira replied that she actually already had something lined up and would start Monday. Surprise crossed Marjorie's features. That was fast. Was it anything interesting? Kira smiled, saying it was very interesting, a leadership position she was quite excited about. Marjorie nodded absently, already mentally moving on to other matters, wishing Kira good luck. As Kira walked out of TechVantage's glass headquarters for the final time, keycard surrendered and personal belongings in tow, she took a moment to look back at the building where she had spent 15 years of her career. On the top floor, she could see the executive conference room lit up for an evening meeting, likely discussing how to redistribute her responsibilities among younger, less experienced, and significantly less expensive staff. Little did they know that in less than 72 hours, that same room would be hosting an emergency crisis meeting instead. Monday morning dawned bright and clear. Kira dressed carefully in her new charcoal suit, a power outfit she had purchased specifically for this day. The Precision Systems town car arrived precisely at 7:30 to take her to their headquarters, where she would start her first day as Chief Innovation Officer. As Kira settled into her new corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows, Greg informed her that the press release had gone live at 7 that morning. Industry newsletters were already picking it up, and the communications team was monitoring reactions. The announcement had been crafted with strategic precision. It detailed Kira's background, emphasized her role as the sole inventor of the patented technology, and outlined how Precision Systems would be integrating the algorithm into their next generation of products. Most importantly, it clearly stated that any company currently using the technology would need to negotiate licensing agreements with Precision Systems moving forward. At precisely 9:15, Kira's phone lit up with the first text from her former team at TechVantage. It was from Miguel, her lead developer, reporting complete chaos and asking what she had done. Kyra smiled, typing back that he should check his personal email where all 6 team members had offers waiting. Meanwhile, 8 miles away at TechVantage headquarters, the scheduled Monday morning executive meeting was undergoing a dramatic transformation. According to Miguel's play-by-play updates throughout the morning, Victor had arrived at the office to find the company's general counsel and chief financial officer waiting at his door, both ashen-faced. The industry announcement had hit their inboxes simultaneously, setting off immediate alarms. By 9:30, what should have been a routine start of week meeting had morphed into an emergency crisis session. Board members were calling in remotely, and the legal team was frantically reviewing Kira's employment contract and the documentation around the algorithm's development. Miguel reported that they were pulling every file with Kira's name on it, and someone had just wheeled in all the servers from the research division for the tech team to analyze. Kyra could picture the scene perfectly: Victor pacing the conference room, demanding explanations from Marjorie and the legal department. The stock would already be responding to the news. Investors hated uncertainty, and the announcement had created plenty of it. At 10:45, Kira received an email from Victor himself, desperation practically emanating from the screen. He wrote that there appeared to be a misunderstanding and asked her to call at her earliest convenience to discuss. Kira forwarded it to Precision Systems' legal team without responding. By noon, the industry was buzzing with speculation. TechVantage's stock had dropped 7% since the market opened, while Precision Systems had seen a 12% increase. 3 different technology journals had requested interviews with Kira about the strategic coup that had shaken the accounting software industry. When Greg stopped by her office to ask how she was feeling, Kira replied honestly that she felt validated. 15 years of watching others take credit for her work, of being told she should be grateful just to have a seat at the table, and now finally she had recognition. Her new executive assistant appeared at the door, announcing that the development team was ready for her in the main conference room, then hesitating before adding that TechVantage's CEO had called 4 times in the last hour. Kira calmly requested that the assistant let him know she was in meetings all day, and that their legal team would reach out to discuss licensing options later in the week. As Kira walked toward her first meeting as Chief Innovation Officer, her phone buzzed with another update from Miguel. The board had just called an emergency session, and Victor looked like he was about to explode. Miguel added that his team accepted the offer and asked when they could start. By Tuesday morning, the full impact of Kira's departure had become clear to everyone at TechVantage. Their flagship product, AccountSphere, relied entirely on her algorithm to process the massive datasets that gave it an edge over competitors. Without licensing rights to her patent, they faced 2 equally unpalatable options: negotiate with Precision Systems or rebuild their core technology from scratch, a process that would take years and millions in development costs. Miguel texted that Victor had called an all-hands meeting for 2 that afternoon. It was his last day at TechVantage. He and the rest of Kira's former team would be starting at Precision Systems the following Monday. Rumor was that the company was going to try to sue her. Kira forwarded his message to their legal department, who responded almost immediately, encouraging them to try. Kira's documentation was impeccable: development logs, timestamps, personal equipment usage, all clearly established. They had prepared for this scenario. Meanwhile, Kira was settling into her new role with remarkable ease. The respect she received at Precision Systems was a stark contrast to her final years at TechVantage. When she spoke in meetings, people actually listened. Her ideas weren't repackaged by male colleagues and presented as their own. Her age and experience were viewed as assets rather than liabilities. During their afternoon briefing, Greg informed her that the engineering team was implementing her efficiency improvements, and early testing showed a 51% performance boost, even better than they had projected. Kira admitted she had several refinements she never shared with TechVantage. After she discovered they were planning to eliminate her position, she saw no reason to give them her best work. Greg replied with a satisfied smile that their loss was Precision Systems' gain. He mentioned that the first licensing inquiry had come in that morning, not from TechVantage yet, as they were still in denial, but from Dataflow Systems, who were worried about being caught in the crossfire. At 3:30, Miguel sent a detailed account of Victor's all-hands meeting. The CEO had tried to project confidence, assuring the staff that TechVantage would vigorously defend their proprietary technology, but the anxiety in the room had been palpable. Several employees had already updated their LinkedIn profiles, sensing the company's vulnerability. Marjorie had looked like she was about to faint when someone asked directly if they had failed to secure the patent. Victor cut the question period short after that. By Wednesday, the industry fallout had intensified. 2 major clients had contacted Precision Systems about switching from AccountSphere, concerned about TechVantage's ability to maintain the product without the algorithm's creator. Precision Systems stock had risen another 8%, while TechVantage's continued its decline. Kira received a call from Denise in HR, the same woman who had slid her severance package across the table just days earlier. Denise began carefully, stating that she was calling to discuss the situation with the patent. They believed there may have been a misunderstanding about ownership rights. Kira replied calmly that she didn't think there was any misunderstanding. Her employment agreement clearly stated that intellectual property developed on her own time using her own resources remained hers. The patent documentation confirmed exactly that. Denise mentioned that Victor was hoping Kira might consider coming in to discuss options. Kira responded that any discussions would need to go through Precision Systems' legal department now, and she was sure they would be happy to set up a meeting to discuss licensing terms. The silence on the other end spoke volumes. Finally, Denise sighed and said she would pass that along. That afternoon, Kira led her first formal presentation to Precision Systems' board of directors, outlining their technology roadmap with her algorithm at its center. As she stood confidently at the head of the table, not hidden in the back as she had been at TechVantage, she caught Greg's approving nod. By Friday, just 1 week after Kira had walked out of TechVantage for the last time, the company had entered full crisis mode. Their stock had fallen 23% from Monday's opening bell, triggering concerned calls from major investors. Industry analysts were publishing speculative pieces questioning whether TechVantage could survive the algorithm crisis and analyzing how one strategic blunder might cost a tech giant everything. Through her industry contacts, Kira learned that Victor had finally acknowledged the severity of the situation to the board. TechVantage would need to either license her algorithm from Precision Systems, likely at exorbitant rates that would devastate their profit margins, or undertake a complete rebuild of AccountSphere without using any technology covered by her patent. Miguel informed Kira during their Friday video call that they had started interviewing for a new development team. Victor was claiming they could recreate the functionality in 6 months. Kira couldn't help but laugh. The original algorithm had taken her 3 years to perfect, and that was with intimate knowledge of the problem space. Miguel agreed that nobody was believing the timeline, especially after her team posted their resignation letters simultaneously. The knowledge drain was massive. That afternoon, TechVantage's attorneys finally reached out to Precision Systems to open dialogue about potential licensing arrangements. Their legal team, following the strategy they had developed, responded with terms that were technically fair but strategically painful, 3 times the standard industry licensing rate, plus a public acknowledgement of Kira's role as the technology inventor. Greg predicted they would balk at the acknowledgement more than the cost. Victor's ego wouldn't allow him to admit he pushed out the person who created their core technology. Kira replied that then they would have to rebuild, and every day they spent trying to replicate her work was another day Precision Systems extended their lead in the market. The following Monday morning, 10 days after her unceremonious dismissal, Kira led the first meeting with her newly assembled innovation team, which included Miguel and the other 5 engineers from TechVantage. The energy in the room was electric as they mapped out the next evolution of her algorithm. Anita, one of her former team members, commented that this was how development meetings should be. At TechVantage, they spent half their time explaining basic concepts to executives who wouldn't listen anyway. Kira replied that was the difference between being valued and being seen as replaceable. Here their expertise was recognized. As they wrapped up the productive session, Kira's assistant appeared at the door with news of a significant development. TechVantage's board had just announced an emergency leadership change. Victor Lawson was stepping down effective immediately. The news spread quickly, and within hours, industry publications were reporting that TechVantage's board had lost confidence in Victor's leadership following the patent oversight that threatened the company's flagship product. Marjorie Thompson was also out, along with the head of legal who had failed to properly secure the patent. That evening, Kira received an unexpected email from Richard Donovan, TechVantage's newly appointed interim CEO. Unlike Victor's desperate message from the previous week, this one was straightforward and respectful. He congratulated Kira on her new position and explained that he had been brought in to help TechVantage navigate the current situation. He wanted to discuss a fair licensing arrangement for her patented technology and stated they were prepared to acknowledge her contributions publicly and make appropriate amends for the oversights of previous management. He asked if she would be available to meet the following week. Kara forwarded the email to Greg, adding a simple note that Phase 1 was complete. His reply came quickly, praising her beautiful execution. The board was celebrating her first major victory for Precision Systems. It looked like TechVantage was finally learning an expensive lesson about valuing innovation and innovators. 3 months after her departure from TechVantage, Kira sat on stage at the National Technology Innovation Conference, preparing to deliver the keynote address. The audience was filled with industry leaders, technology journalists, and aspiring developers, many of whom now knew her story. The conference organizer introduced her as Chief Innovation Officer at Precision Systems and creator of the distributed processing algorithm that had revolutionized data handling across multiple industries. The applause was substantial as she approached the podium. What a difference a few months could make. Last year, she had attended this same conference as part of the TechVantage delegation, seated in the back while Victor gave a presentation about his company's innovations. Kara thanked the audience and began her presentation about innovation ownership and the importance of properly valuing intellectual contributions regardless of where they came from. She detailed the technical aspects of her algorithm, but also touched on broader issues of recognition and respect in the technology sector. Without directly mentioning TechVantage, she emphasized the importance of companies protecting their innovators rather than seeing them as replaceable resources. Afterward, during the reception, several young women engineers approached Kira seeking advice and mentorship. One of them, barely 30, confided that Kira's story had changed how she documented her work. She had started keeping detailed logs of her development process on personal time. Kara told her that was smart, that her innovations deserved protection. As the evening concluded, Kira checked her phone to find an industry news alert. TechVantage had finally announced the licensing agreement with Precision Systems, acknowledging her by name as the algorithm's creator. Their stock had stabilized, though at a significantly lower valuation than before her departure. 1 year to the day after being told to clean out her desk, Kira sat in her spacious office at Precision Systems reviewing the quarterly innovation report. Under her leadership, the company had released 3 groundbreaking products built on her algorithm, capturing significant market share from TechVantage and other competitors. A knock at her door interrupted her analysis. It was Greg, holding a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses. He wished her happy anniversary and explained that the board had asked him to share news with her personally before the public announcement. Precision Systems had officially surpassed TechVantage in market valuation for the first time in company history. Kira smiled, feeling not triumph but a quiet satisfaction. That was what happened when you valued innovation properly. As Greg poured the champagne, her assistant delivered a sleek envelope. Inside was an invitation to speak at Women in Technology's annual leadership summit. The topic was owning your intellectual value and how proper documentation changed an industry. Greg commented that she had become something of an icon. The story about the executive who didn't recognize what she had until it was gone had become a cautionary tale in corporate boardrooms. Richard Donovan, who had remained as TechVantage's CEO after the crisis, had implemented sweeping changes in how the company recognized and rewarded innovation. Their new policies on intellectual property protection and inventor recognition were reportedly modeled after the program Kira had established at Precision Systems. Kira explained that it was never about revenge. It was about recognition, about showing the industry that innovation wasn't anonymous. It came from real people who deserved real credit. Greg agreed, raising his glass to proper recognition. As the afternoon sun streamed through her office windows, Kira reflected on her journey. At 56, she had finally found what had eluded her throughout her career, not just success, but acknowledgement. Her name was now permanently attached to the algorithm that had changed an industry, exactly where it belonged.